So here's what we're going to be installing today. Here's the tail tidy itself. It is an AliExpress version. The Evotech was out of stock when I ordered it a few months ago, but they are back in stock now, I believe. So if you do want the genuine one, then obviously go for that instead. I'll show how all this works. It does come with its own light, which I'll show how to install as well. And then I will also be installing the Evotech passenger peg delete kit. And then I've also ordered 2 of these Pro bolt kits. That's for both for the number plates for both versions of the bike. I just want to make sure I've got all the bolts in black, because some of the bolts that come with that are actually silver. And then the tools we're going to need: screwdriver, 1/4 inch ratchet with 10mm socket on it, 10mm spanner, T30, and then a 4, a 3 and a 2.5mm Allen key. So the first few things we're going to be removing is the seat cowl and the seat itself, then these 2 10mm bolts. Now this just pops out like so. Now at this point some people remove these bolts, take this plastic piece out. I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to do it as is. I've still got plenty of access to where I want to get to, so we'll go for the removal of the original tail tidy now. So to get this tail out, I've got these 2 bolts here, and then there's also a third T30 up there. So these 2 T30 bolts, if we look up here, they do actually have nuts on the other side of them. You can just see through there, there's a nut there, and then this one's a little bit easier to get to, but there's also a nut just there. So we're going to use the spanner to hold them as we loosen from the other side. So as you can see, I've managed to just slide the spanner under that plug there, and it is on the nut just underneath it. This plug does move, it's just on this rubber bung there, so you can move it out your way to have a look and get the spanner through. Keep them bolts safe somewhere. So now on this side you can see the nut just through there. So if we just shimmy under there, you can see we've got the spanner on, and we can start undoing from the other side. Right, so now we just need to retrieve the nuts. So there's one there, and there is one back there. The easiest way to do it is with a magnet. You can wriggle it in. So there's one. And see if we can get the other. So to get the nut just on that left hand side, I've had to go, or I will have to go this way. So once you get those 3 bolts out, it does just drop, and then there's only the cable to disconnect. So the plug we're looking for is this white one. So there's just, if it focuses, that clip there, so you need to just push that little tab in and release it. Once that plug's disconnected, we can just work it out like so. Now we're at this point, there's 2 bolts that hold the indicators in. Once they're undone, they come loose, and then at that point we need to take this screw out. Keep that to one side. This plate comes off, and then we've got all the cables in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to release all of these clips, get the main harness out. We're going to need that. So if you just pull on the clip, it comes out without damaging the cables. So now we're going to have 3 separate connectors. The white one is going to be the number plate light, which for this tail tidy you don't need to use this light, it's got its own, which I'll show you in a bit. And then there are two connectors, so obviously your right side indicator and left side indicator, and that's the harness we're going to reuse over here. So one thing to note is the two connectors for the right and the left side indicator are different. So obviously when you flip it round, this one's your right hand one, that one's your left hand one. But if you notice, they have tape, so there's blue tape on the one on the left and there's red tape, so R for red on that one. So just remember which side goes on which one, because you won't be able to just flip the connectors on the harness because they only go to one side, so keep that in mind. Then obviously once you're happy with that, it's just a case of removing the indicators, put them to one side, and then we are done with this main original factory tail. So move that out of the way. Then we're going to start building this one up. So like I said, the light already comes with this one. I've left everything roughly loose, but I have already built it. So this particular kit comes with several of these. Now what this does is it spaces out your indicator light. Now, so for my application, I've decided one of these spaces is enough for my indicator light. That's enough for my number plate. But keep that in mind when you build this one up from AliExpress. It gives you the option to have your indicator light further out. If you see from here, if I show you, it's going to be roughly like so. Obviously if you've got a really big number plate, it needs to stick out a little bit further. So bear that in mind when you're building it up. So as you can see, these split in half and then the cables run along the inside track. So we need to start getting everything in and wired. So as I look at this now, let's see if I can get this right. So right hand side, so obviously it's going to be that way around. The right hand side turn signal should be this one. So if I remove this bolt, so there's two holes. Bigger one is for your cable and connector, or else it won't go. You can see that goes like so. That goes through there. What I'm going to do for now is I'm going to build it with the original bolts that were provided. Then at the end, or a little bit further down the line, I'm going to try and find the black bolts from the Pro Bolt kit to see how they all fit. So you can see how it's going to start to look. Like I say, I'm not going to do any of these super tight, because I'll probably be replacing the majority of these bolts back for the black ones. Just like so, we've got two indicators attached now, so we can start looking at wiring the cables through and doing the harness. So what I'm going to do first is, I don't really like these connectors, so I am going to do something else for these. So as I was saying, I don't particularly like these connectors, so I'm going to be cutting them off and soldering them together using these heat shrink solders. I've used them in the past, they're actually quite good, so I prefer them to these. Cables connected, we're just going to make sure the solder is over the exposed cable, and then we're going to heat shrink them on. That's what we're going to do now. So as you can see there, it focuses. They've melted and created a nice seal around. We've got a good connection. Not going to pull out. And another thing I like to do when I do repairs or connections like this is actual harness tape. So I'll wrap this round, makes it look a bit more factory, bit better quality of a repair or job. So we will fit that. The only thing I will say about this tape is if you ever want to get it off, it's not very easy to get off. So I've kind of shot myself in the foot there. I've obviously, instead of thinking about what I was doing and shortening that, I didn't. So I think that's what I'm going to go for. I'd rather have the connector about there. It would make a lot more sense. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to undo what I just did, but it'll be a better job in the long run. Right, that didn't go very well. I overstripped the cable when I stripped back the outer sleeving, but that's fine. I've managed to connect them. A little trick to do when you want to get those small little piddly cables through one of these sleeves is just bend the edge or the front end on them back, and then they'll slide through no problems. So now I'm just going to heat gun this, make sure it solders correctly, and then again I'll test it, then wrap it all up, make sure it's good, and we'll go from there. So as we can see, the solder's melted, should have connected them pretty well. So we're going to test this now with the harness, and if it works we'll carry on. Just going to plug this back in. Now that's plugged in, we should be okay to just plug in the light. So that's now connected. We'll just gently place that on there and we'll try the key. As we can see, the light's working, which means we've got a good connection. Right, happy days, we know it works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to electrical tape it, because we do have a little bit of exposed wire just there. I'm not happy about it, it's not perfect, but again, this is the light, it's not part of the harness itself for the bike, so if this does fail, it's an easy replacement, a couple of screws back here, and we can just rewire it better the next time we do it. We live and we learn. We'll make this off as best we can, and then we'll carry on with the job. So we'll take some black electrical tape and just protect this wire as best as possible. Again, I'm not massively concerned. I don't really ride the bike in the rain, and it's going to be covered with this in there, so the cable should have more than enough protection. Then for good measure we'll do the harness tape again. So there we are, shot on the harness, and now it should be much easier fitting all the cables we need in here. So that took us a little bit longer, but now it should help us in the long run. So let's connect everything back up. We've got light harness, or connector, sorry. We've got connector for there, and a connector for, oh, wrong way around, that connector. So again, I'm going to take this to the bike, we're going to test it before I start putting it all back together. Right guys, so now I've connected it again. We've got all 3 lights connected and it's facing down, which means that that should be our right, that should be our left. So we're just going to test all the indicators. So we've got light, we've got left indicator, we've got right indicator. So we're happy that works. I'm now going to take it off again, finish building that up, and then we'll install it for def. So now we know everything works, it's just a matter of putting it all together and then installing it on the bike. So again, we're just going to make sure these cables fit in here, which is now much easier with the shortened light cable. I'll try and get that through there. That's wanting to pop out. So as you can see, this makes it much cleaner. So that's a little bit fiddly, but we've got it together as best as possible. You do have to kind of loosen, try to get these gaps right, try to get everything correct. For the most part, it don't look too bad. Might just adjust that little gap back there a little bit if I can. There we go, looking much better. Right, tail tire is now complete and ready to go. This is the base plate that goes on the bike, and then the tail tire bolts to that, and that's using these 2 bolts, and then these 2 factory bolts. And this is a cover that goes over it, and I'll show you how that goes as well. So we're going to start putting it on the bike and then see how it looks. This plate's attached using the 2 back factory bolts, and then it comes with another new bolt and a spacer. And I'll try and remember how all that goes. I will see if I can use any of the black bolts that I ordered for these 4 and that one, potentially that one, but we'll see. So here's where this plate fits. I'm just going to have to try and work out exactly how it fits. So obviously the 2 bolts go through there, and then it looks like the spacer is to prevent it doing that. So I believe the bolt goes through here like so, then with the spacer, and then if we can find it, bolts into here like so. So let's try that. Then these 2 factory bolts go through these 2 bolts holes. So what I'm going to do, this is the bit that's going to be quite difficult. So you can actually put the nut through there and then use your finger to hold it. So the left hand side was much more difficult to get the nut on, but if you shimmy it in and keep trying, you do eventually get it. So now it's just a case of, again, using the spanner. Nice and snug. And this one. snug. Then make sure this one's tight. Unfortunately I don't have one this size in black. That's nice and tight, so that's the plate secure. Now we're going to push the harness through. And once we've got it, we can start pulling it in. Being careful not to trap any cables. So there we are. Then we're going to get our bolts. So there's one in. There's another one in. And it's starting to take shape. And that is the tail tidy pretty much finished. So now the tail tidy is on, we just need to plug it in. So now everything's on. The last stage in this bit here is to just tuck all the cables away neatly. And that looks pretty much how we started. That's all the cables tucked away. I've just off camera tightened all these bolts up. As you can see, it's pretty sturdy. So the final piece we've got to put on is this cover. And it just slides on like so. Then we put the bolts in, like so. This cover just makes it look a little bit sleeker and finishes it off, covers most of the bolts. Now that we've installed that cover, it does look like it's fitted wrong. It looks like it maybe wants to go over that bit over there. However, there's no way of doing that, because if you was to put that on first, then you won't be able to access the bolts. So I think this is the way it goes. As you can see, that now looks much better, and I like the fact the cables go inside the tail tidy. It's much neater, gives the bike a much cleaner look. Now we're going to refit the seat cowl. Nice and snug, don't need to be too tight. And one thing I'd always suggest, if you've ever been messing around here, this is obviously where the locking mechanism is, so it's important to check that your key will still work, just in case you've accidentally got a cable trapped in the mechanism or anything like that. Now that we're happy it works, seat cowl can go back on, like so. Now for the last thing, like I said, we're going to also install these. So these just fit using these little clips. These are genuine Evo style ones. I must admit I had a massive issue getting the original foot pegs off, but these are pretty easy, just like so. See, when you fit these and you push the protruding part in, you hear a little click. That's how you know they're secure and fitted correctly, just like that. So that's the AliExpress tail tidy, fully installed and complete. Unfortunately, none of the bolts I ordered from ProBolt would fit this particular tail tidy, but that's not a problem. What I'll do is I'll probably end up taking the ones that you can see, like this one, out, measuring it, and then ordering the individual bolts I actually need, just so I can have them in black. But to be honest, I'm really happy with tail tidy. It's nice and secure, it looks nice, the cables are hidden. So I do highly recommend it if you're interested. I'll try find a link and drop it below. you.